Thomas Massie and Marjorie Taylor Greene are two members of the House, both Republicans, who have often noted how often the House meets in order to discuss matters pertaining not to the lives of the American people, but to Israel, or to combating criticism of Israel, or to investigating the alleged epidemic of bigotry, not against every minority group, but against only American Jews, notoriously excluded from centers of power in the United States. It's like an obsession. They do it all the time. Every time I turn around, there's another hearing about anti-Semitism or about criticism of Israel that are being organized by the Republican-led House and Senate. Yesterday was no exception. The Committee on Education and Workforce, which is chaired by House member Virginia Foxx, a Republican of South Carolina who oftentimes has no idea where she is, it was entitled, quote, and it sounds like a kind of woke thesis from one of these universities that they're so interested in, Anti-Semitism in higher education, examining the role of faculty funding and ideology. It's really right out of 2020. Just think about a Democrat-led committee convening a House hearing with the title Systemic Racism in Higher Education, examining the role of faculty funding and ideology, or misogyny in higher education, or transphobia in higher education, examining the role of faculty funding and ideology. That would be widely mocked by conservatives, but anti-Semitism in higher education, examining the role of faculty funding and ideology as a relentless topic of House Congressional investigation is something that prompts a lot of respect, whispered reverence among so many conservatives and Democrats who otherwise would be mocking this if this were done for any other group, or let alone for another foreign country. Now, it's worth remembering that the House has not just confined itself to theatrical hearings where they haul university presidents before them. They've actually tried implementing legislation that would implement into law wildly expanded definitions of anti-Semitism, which would prohibit, outlaw, render officially anti-Semitic a whole range of common criticism of Israel. You couldn't say Israel is a racist endeavor under this definition, though you can say that the United States is a racist endeavor. You can compare American leaders or Russian leaders or Chinese leaders or Iranian leaders to the acts of Nazi leaders, but you cannot compare the acts of Israeli leaders to what the Nazis did. That is also prohibited. You cannot say that you believe that the Jews played a critical role in the killing of Jesus Christ, even though many in Christianity have long maintained that, believe the Bible describes that. And if you read the Bible, you can certainly make a good case that it does. And you also couldn't say, I think Ben Shapiro has greater loyalty to Israel than to the United States, even though you could prove it, even if he says it's true. You still can't say it because that's officially defined as anti-Semitism and therefore banned from under American law. It would have been had this law passed, but it's now being forced on colleges. From the Jewish Insider, December 20th, 2024, how the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act fell apart. Prospects looked promising earlier this year for the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act, the bipartisan legislation that passed the House by a 320 to 91 vote in May. 320 members of the House, Democrats, Republicans, all voting yes to insert this blatantly pro-censorship act into our legal framework, and only 91 voting no. And then the Jewish Insider says, following shocking scenes of anti-Israel protests on college campus. Why is it shocking that college students are protesting Israel when our government is arming and funding them in what most human rights organizations, international tribunals, many governments around the world say is a genocide? And I think we're at the point where you cannot use any other words to describe it. Why is it shocking that students in America, on American college campuses, including many Americans, many Jews, would be protesting the U.S. financing and arming of the Israeli genocide in Gaza? It goes on, quote, the bill was buoyed by advocacy from major American Jewish organizations amidst a nationwide wave of anti-Semitism. Chuck Schumer has been reluctant to bring the anti-Semitism legislation up for a standalone Senate vote out of concern that such a move might expose a significant divide among Senate Democrats over the legislation, according to two sources familiar with the legislation. In the Senate, progressive Democrats and a small number of hard-right Republicans would be expected to oppose it, or in some cases have already expressed opposition to the bill over its use of the IHRA definition. That's the International Holocaust Remembrance Act. So when Israel wanted to impose a radically expanded definition of anti-Semitism to make off limits in the West a whole variety of criticisms of that country, needless to say, they slapped the word Holocaust remembrance on it so that people were afraid to vote no. Who's against Holocaust remembrance? Kind of like we called it the Patriot Act in 2001, because who would be against a patriotic act? Quote, the claim by some right-wing Republicans that the legislation could deem parts of the New Testament anti-Semitic has led to some additional opposition to the bill among conservatives since it initially passed the House. Right. A lot of people believe the New Testament describes the role Jews played with Romans in the death of Jesus. People in Christianity, not all, but many have believed that for 2 millennia. And this bill would make it illegal, basically, to express that view, both on college campuses and more broadly. That's the sort of thing that is the framework, that expresses the framework that is being increasingly opposed, not to ban the protest rights of foreign students, but to radically restrict the free speech rights of American professors, scholars, students, and Americans writ large. Here are a couple of excerpts from yesterday's hearing. One of the leaders of the faculty of the college that they called was the chancellor of CUNY, which is a college, University of New York, named Felix Matos Rodriguez, and Elise Stefanik, who loves to take the leading role in prancing around as sort of the queen overseer of American academia from her house seat in New York. She believes she can dictate who can be on faculty, who can't, who can be heard, who can't be. This movement, by the way, got 3 Ivy League presidents fired, arguably 4, 2 at Columbia, 1 at Penn, 1 at Harvard. Previously, it had been impossible to get a single Ivy League president removed. It's like a lifetime job, unless they leave for an investment bank or something. But the issue of Israel and anti-Semitism, in case you're wondering where real power lies, is what finally led to their mass firing. Here's Elise Stefanik interrogating the chancellor of this university.
Thank you. I want to begin by discussing the heinous scourge of anti-Semitism on your watch as chancellor at CUNY. You are aware at Baruch, Jewish freshmen were welcomed with heinous anti-Semitic taunts about the hostages killed by Hamas. Quote, "Where's Hirsch, you ugly expletive? Go bring them home," end quote. Quote, "You ain't going home tonight. Go back to Brooklyn. All Zionists are terrorists," end quote. Are you aware of those anti-Semitic harassment slurs?
All Zionists are terrorists. Now, if they had said all Jews are terrorists, you could certainly argue, I think quite convincingly, that that was an anti-Semitic opinion. Now, I've heard for a long time that racist and bigoted opinions fall within the free speech right that's God-given to Americans or guaranteed and protected by the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, or both. So even if we're anti-Semitic, why is Congress getting involved in regulating it and trying to demand that it be legally constrained, but not for racist or xenophobic or misogynistic or Islamophobic or transphobic speech? Why just this speech? But that isn't what this random person said. And look how they cherry pick these, but who knows who that person was saying that. But let's assume somebody said that. Zionists are all terrorists. Not all Jews are Zionists. Many, many Jews are not. And many people who are Zionists are not Jewish, as Joe Biden pointed out when he talked about how proudly he embraces the Zionist label. Zionism is an ideology, not a group of people. It's a belief system. And if you believe it's terrorism, it'd be like saying radical Islam is terrorism. Or neoconservatism is terrorism. It's not racist. It's condemning a belief system. But because Zionism is terrorism, is perceived as an attack on Israel, this American congresswoman believes it's her duty to regulate what American universities are doing about it.
Those are deplorable statements, and if they were associated with the event at Baruch, an investigation was done and students were disciplined.
And students were disciplined in both of those cases? At Hunter, Jewish students were forced to enter the main university building under a swastika for hours. Is that correct?
My understanding of that is that the swastika was placed outside, and we have a custom of erasing all such deplorable symbols. In that particular case, there was a delay because it had to be referred to the NYPD for the anti-hate investigation.
So they got the NYPD, and now let me just make clear, this swastika is not an expression of neo-Nazi ideology. It's an accusation that the Israelis are committing genocide along the lines of what the Nazis did. It's a criticism of the Israeli government. It's not an expression of neo-Nazi ideology. But that conflation is deliberate. But again, I thought the whole idea of free speech, like you can wave a Confederate flag, even though a lot of black people, for good reason, find it very threatening, very discomforting, very alarming. But all of these principles are being completely renounced in the name of protecting Israel, especially from criticism on academic campuses, the one place of all the places in the society where we ought to have unconstrained speech. That was a basic principle in the Enlightenment, that society in general should protect free speech. But if any place is crucial for the questioning of orthodoxies and taboos, it's academic institutions. That's what it's for. And it can only work if you protect academic freedom and free speech, which many, many members of Congress are not just periodically or in an isolated way attacking, but systemically attacking with hearings like these and with actions that they're taking.
Remind you of this particular case because that's not according to your own staff. In fact, the Hunter College Director of Jewish Studies emailed university leadership requesting that the swastika be taken down. And instead, this was the response for everyone to see. Apologies, but it is not that simple. Is that the position of CUNY?
It is entirely unacceptable that.
And was this administrator disciplined who emailed?
Again, in that particular case, we were working with the
No, was this administrator disciplined for sending this response?
Any case that we have will investigate and the appropriate action will be taken.
So what was the appropriate action taken against this administrator in this case?
In this case, as I mentioned to you, we are working with the New York City Police Department.
So no disciplinary action has been taken by CUNY? Is that correct?
We will investigate any action.
So an investigation, but no actual action, like so many of these failed university presidents.
A lot of the blame rests with these sniveling cowards who are running universities and they're supposed to be safeguarding values of academic freedom. Why would you just not answer that question? She asked it 6 times. Did you discipline this particular administrator who responded, I think correctly? It's not that simple. It's not a swastika designed to express neo-Nazism, but to criticize the Israeli government and to compare it to Nazi Germany because of the genocide in Gaza. We don't have to agree with that, but that's certainly within the realm of free expression. And just because Jewish students write to a dean and say, we don't like this, take this down, doesn't mean you just instantly go and obey and take it down. I thought the whole point was college students are adults who don't have the right to demand snowflake treatment or demand the suppression of ideas that make them uncomfortable in the name of safetyism. It was more complicated. And yet it's so blatant. Like, why are you so afraid of just answering the question? Like, no, we didn't discipline him. We don't just run the minute somebody demands we suppress speech. We have to think about it and analyze it and understand the context of what it is. Why don't you say that? And more to the point, why don't you go there and say, we didn't discipline him because we didn't think he did anything wrong. We believe in free speech on our campus. And we're not going to answer to Congress about what views we allow on our campus. We don't have to agree with them, but we believe in free speech. It's a vital function of academic freedom. Why don't they go and say that that's their role? But the fact that they go there so apologetic, trying so hard to placate these state interrogators, makes it look like they're guilty. But that's what administrators are in college. They're basically technocrats, constantly talking in the smoothest, like most comforting, vaguest ways to never offend anybody. Here is another segment with Elise Stefanik, who, by the way, is using this because she wants to run for governor of New York against Kathy Hochul. That's what this is really all about. And here's more of that.
Are you familiar with CUNY Clear? This is the clinical arm of CUNY School of Law.
CUNY Clear, I'm not familiar with them.
Well, I will remind you, the CUNY Clear founder and professor is the head of Mahmoud Khalil's Legal Defense Fund. Are you aware of that?
No.
Does it concern you that New York taxpayers are paying the salary for the legal defense fund of Mahmoud Khalil? And I'll remind you who Mahmoud Khalil is. This is the chief pro-Hamas agitator that led to the anti-Semitic encampments at Columbia, the rioting and violent takeover of Hamilton Hall, the harassment and physical assault of Jewish students.
And we do not condone any kind of anti-Semitism.
But you allow...
Okay, do you see what I mean? She spewed a pack of lies. This professor is not taking public money and putting it into a fund for Mahmoud Khalil. The professor is one of the people spearheading the raising of funds for Mahmoud Khalil's legal defense, because huge numbers of people, including myself, believe that the attempt to punish and deport Mahmoud Khalil, who's a green card holder married to an American citizen, now the father of an American infant, violates free speech in the most fundamental way. And if you're a college professor, those are the values that you're supposed to be defending. And who cares if Elise Stefanik agrees with it or not? Really, who cares? And again, though, he can't even answer the questions she's asking. He can't explain to her why the questions she's asking are offensive and way beyond the power of the federal government, which is not supposed to be running our academic institutions and dictating what ideas can and can't be expressed. He just sits there sniveling and jumps through the hoop 1,000 times about how much he's upset by anti-Semitism, and that just gives credence to all of this.
The head of the clinical legal organization and a professor to be the chief legal aid to Mahmoud Khalil and do his legal defense fund.
Those decisions are made in the clinics, are made in the individual campuses.
It goes up to you. You are the chancellor.
Those decisions are made at
So you take no responsibility.
campuses. I take responsibility for any behavior of our faculty.
So is this acceptable? Is this acceptable?
Any behavior that is anti-Semitic.
Is this acceptable that the legal defense fund for Mahmoud Khalil is the head of CUNY Clear? That's acceptable under your watch.
We do have no tolerance for anti-Semitism on our campuses, and we've been very
So will this person be fired?
Seriously, this is one of the most pathetic people I've seen, but they're all like this. Yes, it is acceptable. Members of our faculty, like every faculty on college campuses for decades in the United States, going back to the founding of the University of Penn by Benjamin Franklin, the University of Virginia by Thomas Jefferson, are intended to defend the right of people to engage in the political expression and political activism they believe in, including providing lawyers to somebody who, in a major case of testing a new theory, is defending First Amendment rights and raising First Amendment arguments. Of course that's acceptable. But he can't say that, nor can he say it's not acceptable. He just keeps repeating like an idiot drone who's been programmed by university lawyers. When asked about this activism, we condemn anti-Semitism. What does that have to do with any of this? This is not anti-Semitism at all. Making sure Mahmoud Khalil has lawyers? I mean, when I went to law school, there were all kinds of clinics that constantly worked pro bono on controversial political cases. That's how you learned how to do litigation, but it's also how you came to understand what your obligation was as a lawyer and a member of a law school, to make sure that people, especially ones with test cases for the broader society and their rights, have legal defense. This is so fundamental. But this guy is so petrified of Congress, and I do blame him, but I also blame the climate of intimidation that the U.S. Congress has purposely cultivated to scare professors and colleges into out of allowing criticism of Israel.
Fired.
Anybody that breaks our rules and our policies, there'll be an investigation. We'll investigate, and if there's any disciplinary action to be taken, we'll take it.
Let me make a prediction. No disciplinary action. This individual is not going to be fired because it's all words, no action. You have failed the people of New York. You have failed Jewish students in New York State, and it is a disgrace. I yield back.
Thank you, gentlelady. The gentlelady's time has expired.
You know, one of the things I've been noticing is that so many people who are not Jewish, like Elise Stefanik, she doesn't talk about that much. She likes to pose as the leading defender of the Jews on whose behalf she speaks. So many of them purport to speak on behalf of Jews. Like, you failed Jews? Who appointed her spokespeople for Jewish students at CUNY? Huge numbers of Jews are disgusted by Israel's behavior. Huge number of Jews are opposed to Zionism. I'm not saying it's the majority, but a very substantial minority at least, and probably a majority at this point, at least in certain schools. This is not about targeting Jewish students or attacking Jewish students, and this has nothing to do with the protest or the alleged harassment of Jewish students or whatever people like to claim. This is all about activism and expression of political views, like providing Mahmoud Khalil with legal defense, a legal defense. And a lot of these Republicans who aren't even Jewish have anointed themselves spokespeople for the Jews in the most condescending and obnoxious way possible. As even if anyone is the spokesperson for the Jews, as though there's a monolithic view among Jews about the Israeli destruction of Gaza, the genocide there, the U.S. funding of it, there isn't. Many of Mahmoud Khalil's most vocal supporters at Columbia are Jews. Now, as I said, all of this, these attacks on academic freedom and free speech led by Elise Stefanik are really about nothing other than her own desire to become governor and to attract ample Zionist money in New York in order to do that, or around the country, get attention for herself. And here she is making very clear exactly who her real target is, the person she wants to run against.
I am calling on Governor Kathy Hochul, the worst governor in America, who has bent the knee to the anti-Semites in the party, to call on Chancellor Rodriguez to resign. She needs to make that call today. She controls the Board of Trustees, which hires and fires the chancellor.
All right, it's a little hard to hear because it's her in a press conference in the hallway with tons of people murmuring. But of course, she's just calling for yet another scalp. She wants yet another university leader fired for failing to repress criticism of Israel. That's what she's really doing, and she's using it specifically to bash Kathy Hochul. So Kathy Hochul either does what Elise Stefanik demands and fires the CUNY chancellor, or she runs and uses that to run against her and get money from it. Here from, just as a reminder, from December of 2023, Elise Stefanik celebrates the University of Penn's president's resignation after she targets university heads. Here from The Independent, January 3rd, 2024, Republican Elise Stefanik claims credit for Harvard's president's resignation. Here from the New York Post, Stefanik demands Columbia president resign, putting Jewish students' safety at risk, and the Columbia president did resign. It's their obsession. It's what the Congress works on. If your dog is constantly scratching, itching, or dealing with stubborn hot spots, you need to check out Coat Defense, a natural alternative that's been making a big difference for so many dogs. What really stood out to me is this. At the shelter that I work at, but also at my home where I have 25 rescue dogs, I've seen just how common yeast infections are over the years, especially in paws, ears, and skin folds. Most people don't realize how often it happens, including pet owners. And while treatments that veterinarians like to issue, such as steroids or antibiotics or Apoquel or Cytopoint, might give temporary relief, they often don't get to the root of the issue. In some cases, they may even make things worse over time. Coat Defense takes a different approach. Their daily preventative powder doubles as a dry shampoo, odor neutralizer, and anti-itch powder. But what makes it powerful is how it naturally disrupts the environment yeast and bacteria need to thrive. No harsh chemicals, no synthetic ingredients, just simple, safe, effective relief. They also offer a gentle aloe-based shampoo for sensitive skin that helps smooth irritation while protecting your dog's natural oils and microbiome. Plus, it's completely free from parabens, sulfates, and artificial additives. So if your dog is struggling, nothing has helped. Head over to coatdefense.com and use the promo code GLENN to get 15% off your first order. That's coatdefense.com, and the code is GLENN. Thanks for watching this clip from System Update, our live show that airs every Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern exclusively on Rumble. You can catch the full nightly shows live or view the backlog of episodes for free on our Rumble page. You can also find full episodes the morning after they air across all major podcasting platforms, including Spotify and Apple. All the information you need is linked below. We hope to see you there.